Hi, this is my low pressure atmosphere glider. Obviously, it is tailored for Duna and its intended use is there, and this is where I will use it in this video. It's rotated this way so that we don't need to do a roll when taking off. So it's visible that these small control surfaces on the boosters are correcting for the problems of the wings. After the detachment of the boosters, there was a huge explosion, so I had to switch back from the map to check whether something happened, but didn't. So the wing is somewhat tilted at an angle, which means it's easier to use it as a glider because the nose can be horizontal when it flies horizontal. It's also using triple wings. This way it will have enough lift even in the low pressure atmosphere or low density atmosphere of Duna. But also, of course, the gravity is smaller, so it has some advantage. Yeah, those two tanks collided. It's possible to do a roll to just move them farther away to not collide, but I don't care about that at this point. They would sink deep enough in the atmosphere to just fall down on their own. And this is quite standard stuff. Just 2 steps were used for the acceleration, or a trans-Duna injection, and a single burn was used at the appropriate time to do every correction for the encounter with Duna. I don't really use launch windows most of the time because they're too complicated to set up. I just simply like to wait. It's easier to wait get this. Of course, this requires several hundred meters per second more rotary. I wanted to keep this inclination around this because I wanted to go to the face. There is no other target at the moment what I could use. There is nothing on the surface. I reset everything at 0.90, so I started at time 0 with everything empty in this sandbox. So I have already the face. The camera is not visible from actually any altitude. It's very hard to notice even if you know it's there. And you don't know where you are. That's the other hard point. So when you are on the ground, you can find the camera. The SSTV pyramid is not visible from at least 0.24. It was not visible when I started to play the game. So unfortunately, these are the 2 things what we can go there. And of course, there is this face. So arrow capture, arrow braking, usual stuff, and synchronized to 100 kilometers so that I can wait until my target, the crater on northern hemisphere, comes into view. And during the arrow braking, it's not the arrow braking. During the descent of the glider, it will be visible that the projected trajectory will hit one of the mountains. But even at 20,000 meters in this thin atmosphere, it will have enough lift just to glide above it. So it doesn't really matter. It will correct itself. Here's the detaching of the cruise stage. It should stay here around 100 kilometers. It has enough power to land actually. The funny thing is, instead of using wings, just putting more fuel on it in the same mass, it will be enough to do a precise pinpoint landing at the face without the wings. But I wanted to fly in the atmosphere of Duna. I wanted to feel how it is and actually the first few attempts were dual probe gliders. They were dual so that they are balanced on both sides of the rocket. This one was so heavy that I needed to overcome that limitation. So here it is that it's intersecting the mountain and this limitation, and of course I had to put it somehow outside of the cabin atmosphere, and the solution was to move the center of mass forward. and so that's why it's so that it's in the middle of the whole thing, that the wings are below the most of the mass. Still moving. The sun is rising. It's only after we just released this automatic function that we had 0.90, and just moving it a little bit up, it will glide about this easily. That's it. After this, my biggest problem is to lose speed. I have to get down actually to a lower altitude to lose speed. This craft is designed so that it's marginally stable, just tiny bit stable, so that it's easily maneuverable. It's very nice. It really works nice, but at these speeds, it will be around 300 or something when I start to turn. So here I was looking for the no, not here, but just a few months later. So around here I was starting to look for the face, and for a while I didn't find it. Checking the radar altimeter. So I'm looking for it. I know that it has to be here. There it is. So I started to turn here, and at these speeds it reacts sluggishly. And you have to be careful not to turn too fast, because you can lose all lift and cannot turn back again, because it's just a tiny little bit stable, just because of easy controllability. It's exactly because that. So it's a design choice. I could move the wings somewhat to have more stability, but it is stable enough. Also, the tanks are so that first the forward and the backward tank is used. That doesn't change the center of mass. Then the center tank is used. That also doesn't change the center of mass. And after that, the left center and right center tank is used. That these again don't change the center of mass. And when everything is out, the last two tanks next to the engines are used, and those move the center of mass somewhat backwards, but at that point of the time it's already outside the atmosphere, so it's not important. It also has 4 engines, because I tried it with 2. 2 would be enough from these small Rockomax engines, but the problem is that then the outgoing jets hit the tail fins. I mean the vertical, no, not the vertical, so the horizontal stabilizer, and then the game thinks that there is no net force on the craft, because the jet hits the stabilizer, so the counter force completely balances the thrust of the engine. In reality, it would be so the jet would go above and below the surface, and actually it would give more power to the controls. But in this game somehow it happens, so I had to make it so that the engines are avoiding. There is the face again. So the engines avoid the control surfaces, and that's why there are 4, because this way they are balanced, and just a turn. And I still have to lose altitude and speed, which during the same time is not that easy. Even in this thin atmosphere, it flies quite well, and it's a really nice feeling. It's not really a practical thing, because it's heavy and has several problems. So, for example, before I did this approach, after synchronization or so, I did a quick save, and I had a reason for that. Normally I don't do saves in videos, but I had to do it in this case, because this craft has some peculiarities. Just, yeah, as all space planes. So here's the space plane coming up again. The face, yeah, there it is. So I wanted to land, and I wanted to land on a slope, well, an upward slope, that it helps me to slow down. And as usual, I have to use the RCS to slow me down, because of the small gravity, and also because of the high lift. In contrast, the other other lander I showed in the last video, which was packed into the cargo bay, this uses the RCS reverse. It needs it to push it down to the ground, otherwise it cannot. So otherwise it cannot stop. The other one I used it to keep it in the air until it slows down sufficiently to use the brakes. Face jab. So he's floating above. I think I was around 600 meters from the face. I intentionally bent somewhat to the left so that I don't hit the face if I cannot stop in time. So that's why I ended up somewhat to the left from it. And this was the hard part, landing this thing. This is actually very hard, even with these landing gears on the wings. It always needs RCS, so just showing where I am. So it always needs RCS to land. I could never land the space plane on Duna without RCS. That's why it has these huge tanks, especially for landing. It has full science package. It's possible to conduct experiments with it. I had to wait for orbiting cruise stage to get into position. Then wanted to turn to east with the gravity, and it didn't go so well, so it took a while. Finally I could manage to turn to east, and using the engine's low thrust and RCS to move away from the ground, just go up to around 5 kilometers where there is almost no atmosphere on Duna, and then start my burn towards mostly east with small corrections. Somewhat to the north there is Ike. It's rising above the horizon, so some corrections towards north to decrease inclination. I was correcting towards this orbiter. At this point it was full burn, and I was very lucky, so I managed to have a timing that I didn't need to finish the circularization, and I could start the burn for rendezvous with the cruise stage. The strange thing in this is that it's not a usual docking maneuver. It's not enough to align all the three indicators, because the docking port is 90 degrees rotated. Because of that, the cruise stage has slightly imbalanced the center of mass, so it's not exactly in the geometric middle, but the ASAS unit can compensate for that every time, so it's not really a big problem. Not because of the docking port, but because of these metal parts which hold it. So the easiest way to dock with this is actually from the cockpit. Normally it's easier to do it with the nav ball or looking at the thing from outside, but in this case it's easier to do it from the cockpit, because there the center of the battery, which is on the cruise stage, just helps you to align towards the target. So yeah, there was kind of hectic rendezvous with inclination change and braking and whatever, but it was very nice. It came out better than I thought. Usually I need to do some waiting at some altitude to compensate for my bad timing. So yeah, I'm approaching the cruise stage. And when I'm close enough, just turn to the right direction. Here, after getting very close, just turning off the engines and using RCS to take over. And here it is. From the cockpit it's quite visible that I'm going towards the correct position. It also helps because from the outside view, it's not really visible which way the nose is pointing, so it can be somewhat crooked, and I want it to be exactly in the center. It didn't turn out exactly, but it was quite close. So yeah, I'm getting in the middle. Checked from the outside to see whether I'm close to the docking point, and I was really close, so I moved somewhat up. Probably this is what caused to yank around when it dogged. So yeah, it was a little bit crooked, but mostly it's okay. From here on, that's the usual way, going back. Escape burn, inclination change 0.1 degrees, and after that the correct position, do a classical Hochman transfer. It was just prograde burn, nothing else. In contrast with the other one, but I came here with that was a mixed thing. It burnt in all three directions, and it was complicated, but there was no inclination change. So with this inclination, yeah, setting up the maneuver node for the braking burn for carbon. So yeah, this is a nice craft. I like it, even if it has its drawbacks that it's actually impractical. But it's nice to fly around in the atmosphere of Duna. It's a good feeling. So it's somehow different than a long burn, like 900 meters per second. No launch window again. I didn't want to wait that much, so yeah, I just did it here. It still has enough fuel for that. So actually it has quite a lot of fuel. Yeah, in the sphere of influence of Kelvin, setting up the zero inclination orbit, the help of these lines. There is no indication whatsoever in the game for the inclination and the longitude of ascending node. Just this. Yeah, this is the stuff. The usual spaceplane wing explosion stuff, that it hits some building. I was not even in orbit. I was just on a parabolic flyby with an aero capture, and sure enough it hit one of the buildings in the space center, and that's why I was forced to reload. This is why I started to save around Duna, because once I even got this wing the destruction stuff on Duna. And this is, I think, probably there the face hit it. I didn't check it because I was too frustrated with that. And actually that save game is just before that, from a previous session, that if I want to fly around the face again. So it is the aero capture. I think there were slight re-entry effects this time. Usually there are not. But now I knew that the problem is coming, so yeah, here it is again. 3 elements separated or destroyed and separated the rest of the wing. So yeah, reload again. And somebody should fix this. So yeah, doing it again. It is it's an alternative solution. I'm always checking whether the wings are still intact. As an alternative solution, it's possible to just drop the whole thing with the cruise stage to the ocean, just right next to the space center, and the parachutes on the cruise stage and the nuclear engines and engines on the airplane are enough to slow it down. Enough to survive it, but I didn't want to do that because I knew that it can land on the runway, and that's much nicer. This is a plane, and actually a very good glider, the excellent glider. It should be able to land at the runway. So yeah, decoupling, and now both halves are on their own. Setting up the maneuver node. This time I'm usually to the west of the usual burn place because of the high lift what these wings have. The funny thing is that these wings even generate enough lift during the Duna aero capture to move the periapsis up. Normally it's just sinking down to the surface, but this moves it up. And this also applies here at Kerbin, that it doesn't rise the periapsis this time, but it has so high lift that everything must happen more to the west than usual. So for example, at that peninsula I didn't hit 50,000 meters as usual, but 40,000. So 50,000 was more to the west than usual. And the last thing in this is that it is possible to correct any timing problems. Yeah, here it is again. So just after the re-entry effects kick in, again this building hit stuff, destroyed wings, and my frustration is climbing up again. Frustration level. But at least it looks very nice. It looks like as if it disintegrated because of the re-entry hit. Sure, this flimsy structure wouldn't stand a chance in real life. The aerodynamic effects and the heating would tear it apart. But this was again a collision with the space center, which is really stupid. So anyway, unlike the shuttle, this can do a complete U-turn, so it's not important to aim precisely. It can do a U-turn exactly as I did in the atmosphere of Duna. It can do it here on Kerbin also, at very high altitudes, at very low altitudes. It's really nice. It's really nice to fly. It's almost as if it had some kind of huge delta V reserve, but it's just gliding. Well, not exactly. We know that excess use of control surfaces somehow increases the speed, and it is possible to take off with it from the runway without using the engines. And this is kind of stupid. And actually, this is what is causing the problem during landing. So it's really hard to slow it down, because every tiny control movement what you make will just increase the speed a little bit, and then you have to wait again to decrease the speed, but then you have to do some adjustments again, and then the speed will be increased, and that's why there is the RCS on it. So it is doing it again. Of course, I now know what will happen. The usual thing will happen, of course. Again, much more to the west of the peninsula. I reached 50,000 and I around 40,000 at the peninsula. But even these fates I saved, because I know what will happen next. So this still has too much altitude at this point. It's so excellent glider that it's defying everything else, every logic. Of course, re-entry effects in the dark. And now, just for the visuals, let it destroy itself again. Somehow these inner parts remain for quite a while. This happens several times, that these inner parts somehow don't destroy themselves. But yeah, because it doesn't have any lift without the wings, unlike my other space planes with Mark II cockpit. Needs to be reloaded, and then I quit the game and restarted everything, and now it did work. So the restart is what makes it work. Really, I don't know how they will just debug this. It's a really disgusting bug. Cannot reproduce it, cannot save it. Sometimes it happens, sometimes not after restart. Maybe it's some memory leaking or something. I don't know. So it's really ugly. I don't envy them. Sure enough, they will try to find out what causes this. Maybe the wings are too big. The buildings are too big. Now this is happening since 0.25, so maybe, yeah, but that has the new wings. I was almost on course, so I just need to very little corrections here. Just lose the altitude, and that's it. So yeah, maybe the buildings are doing it, because that was the big change, 0.25. These wings didn't exist in 0.25, but other wings did exist. So yeah, on the runway I needed to use the RCS to push me down and slow me down. Again, after this, it was just getting the cruise stage back, and that's much easier. That's the usual parabolic or whatever ballistic trajectory, the usual way. So putting the 30-kilometer periapsis at the 3/4 between the peninsula and the other continent there, which is not really visible in this video, but anyway, a little bit to the east, because I wanted to fall into the water. It doesn't have any landing legs or gears or whatever, just most of it is quite sturdy, so these metal parts and even the engines can tolerate quite a lot. But it's easier to fall into water. So the classical trajectory at the west coast, hitting the atmosphere, then before the peninsula, hitting 50 kilometers, and then just before the mountains, somewhat before the mountains, starting the re-entry effects. There is the space center, opening the parachutes, just using the engines to cushion, because it's around 8 meters per second, so just go down to 5, then recover. Thanks for watching. Bye.